Good morning, guys. May 15, 2023 of the Bearfax podcast. As promised last week, we have accomplished helicopter pilot Alex Tooms. Alex has been kind enough to join us today. As you'll find out, he's got a very interesting background, interesting upbringing. But the main thing we want to talk about today is an incident that occurred for Alex in Afghanistan and his colleagues. Alex, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Alex, I'm sorry about the technical glitch before. Could you just, where were you born and where did you grow up?
So yeah, my father was with the United Nations in the UNDP. So I was born in Ethiopia, then about 5 or 6 years in Nepal, then about another 5 or 6 years in New York State, America, and then from there I pretty much went to boarding school in the UK, university, bummed around for a few years, and then joined the British Army.
What was boarding school like?
Hated the first 5 or 6 weeks, but after that, best experience of my educational career. I loved it.
Wow.
It was only a small boarding school, and I think there might be a perception. Boarding schools in Australia are a little bit different to the ones in the UK. So in the UK, you've got your kind of poverty boarding schools, and then you've got your very rich boarding schools. And I went to one of the ones towards the lower end. But the class size, like there was only 30 of us in my year group. So you get to know everybody exceptionally well, and it really does become your kind of second family as you go from that 13, 14-year-old to into 18-year-old before you head off to university. So no, and I'm still in touch with almost all of them to this day, which is great.
Wow. You finished boarding school. What do? You said you bummed around for a little bit. You did a bit of travel.
Yeah, so I went to university, tried to do engineering degree, which didn't really whet my appetite too well, and then spent a few years. I just went back to York, where my family were living, and tried to figure out what I was going to do. Had a great few years, not really doing much, but and then I was literally walking past the British Army recruitment office and thought, I'll give this a crack, and I kind of started my career off in the military.
Did you? I'm assuming you didn't go straight into flying.
No, so initially the British Army system is quite different in terms of recruitment. So wanting to go in as an officer, had to do quite a few selection courses for that, and then you have to be sponsored by a regiment. Did a bit of time with the Education Corps, and then with the Royal Tank Regiment. Then kind of went off to didn't fly in the UK in the British Army, and then kind of busted my knee up and was kind of waiting for quite a bit of time, about 12 months, or a bit less than 12 months. And there happened to be an Australian exchange officer over there who mentioned that the Army Air Corps in Australia was quite short of people, and they have this special service scheme, officer scheme. Thought I'd be quite fit, make a good fit for it. So spoke to the Australian Army guys and came over and started with the Army Air Corps over here.
Where was that? Was that in?
So initially I went to Canberra, and then it was Tamworth for basic training, Oki for your kind of helicopter conversion course and tactics course, and then your regimental officer's basic course in Oki. And then the squadron I was initially assigned to was in Oki, so I spent pretty much 5 or 6 years in Oki, yeah. Before
you start on planes first, is that right? You don't start straight away on helicopters?
That's correct, yeah, on CT4s. It was horrendous. Yeah. It was a horrendous experience. I literally spent, I think, most days trying to figure out when I failed and didn't make it what I was going to do next.
Oh, okay.
It was, like I think we started off with about 13 people on my course, and 4 of us got through to the Army helicopter course.
And what helicopters did you start on?
So basic training then was on the Kiowa, effectively Bell 206. But when you first get to a helicopter, this thing seems like a amazing beast of a little thing, and you're just kind of awed by the fact you're flying a turbine helicopter straight away, and even though it was a little bit dated then, still, it was an amazing kind of way to enter the flying world of helicopters. When a lot of guys in the civilian world start off on small Robbies or piston kind of stuff, and you're straight into it. And the Army nature back then was amazing. It was quite an aspect of the instructors wanting to nurture you and help you all the way through as best they could. And we definitely felt that on our course for sure.
How long did it take you to get across the dexterity of the helicopter? Because you've got you've got 2 controls, one in each hand, but you've also got the pedals as well.
Yeah, so I struggled a little bit with the hovering side.
Yeah,
and but you've got the fact with the Army course or any military course is there's a gradient, and you have to meet that gradient by a specific time. So if you fall away from that learning curve, you get a few remedials, but you're not going to get through then after that. So I struggled a little bit with the hovering initially, but after that, once you have a good instructor, it's fine. You kind of get it. But yeah, it probably takes. By the time you finish your initial 3-month course, you've got a fairly good grip on it. But I'd certainly say from myself, at least another 6 months before you, or longer, before you actually just feel it's a natural extension of your body for sure.
And in this training time, are you working with night vision goggles as well?
Yes, I think we were one of the first or second courses to do our night vision goggles as part of our helicopter conversion course and tactics course. So we were that was an older generation night vision goggles. Things were a little bit darker, a little bit more green, not as in a depth of view that we have on the modern ones that we get now. But it was good at the time. I think when my first one, my instructor got lost, so I didn't feel too bad. In fact, not know where I was either. That's
setting even more toll on your body, isn't it? So you're mastering your dexterity, but you're also looking through. Well, it's not a huge, like one of your colleagues, Jason Duggan, in an earlier podcast said it's like looking through 2 toilet rolls.
That's right, and I think there's some discrepancies I've seen in HEMS operations where some guys now put the goggles quite away from it, as far away from their eyes as they can, so they can scan inside. But certainly, I think the nature in the Army was to have them as close as you can to give you as wide as field of vision that you could get from them. But certainly the older models, it was very tubular down those 2.
When did you progress to the Chinook helicopters?
So after helicopter conversion and tactics course, I got initially assigned to Iroquois on the UH-1H, and I spent about 5 or 6 years on those, and then went to the Army retired the Iroquois platform. So in 2007, I went to Chinook.
2 pilots?
Yeah, we were 2 pilots on Iroquois as well. But,
okay.
I think everything was kind of getting geared towards 2 pilot operations anyway across the Army. except for the Kyle guys, they were still predominantly single pilot, but even they were progressing to two pilot. But yeah, we were two pilot on Iroquois, and then so it wasn't a big. For me, it wasn't as big a transition working with another pilot.
And when were you first deployed to Afghanistan?
So my first deployment was 2008. So I was still quite a junior Chinook pilot. Still, after spending so long on Iroquois, that aircraft just becomes a part of you. So learning the Chinook was still a thing for me. So still learning how to really operate it in the best ways it can be operated. So I had some really good aircraft captains that taught me a lot. But 2008, as a junior Chinook pilot, I deployed to Afghanistan.
And your first deployment was uneventful in terms of no near misses, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was still. I had 3 deployments: 2008, 2009, 2012, and each of them had a very different kind of feel about what was going on the ground for me. 2008, I was just still really kind of in that, as I said, being tutored and taught, the Chinook and how to operate it in Afghanistan as well. I think we had some near, some ground contacts. Certainly, going into Helmand was always interesting. That was quite a hot spot at that point in time.
Is that a province?
Helmand is to the west of Kandahar.
Okay.
And that province at that time was being held operated by the British.
And if you're you're in a very big helicopter, when you're flying, are you aware of contact or near misses, or is it more when you land and review the aircraft?
Sometimes I think the best way to describe it is if you tap your pen on a table, that is kind of an indication that someone's shooting at you. If you hear that kind of a noise, a lot of the time you won't know. A lot of the people on the ground, some of them are just shooting at you because you're flying over their fields and they don't want you to. Some of them are shooting at you because they're insurgents. But a lot of the time, these guys haven't really been given the theory of, there's an aircraft moving in a 3-dimensional space and you need to kind of shoot ahead of it for your bullets to then hit it. So, yeah.
How's your mindset when you are flying over there and there are people shooting at you, or do you just block that out and worry about the flying?
You don't really. I didn't really think about it like that. Certainly in 2008, on some of the missions, and as a junior guy as well, you're trying to, do the best you can for myself. And so yeah, there was definitely nerves before getting into the aircraft. But once you're in and running, that kind of fades away, and you're just doing your job, really, and effectively playing a game in your head. Like, it's a game for them, it's a game for us. We're out there to try and do our job, and they're going to try and do their job.
Can you take me to the incident that I would like to talk to you about? Can you give me a bit of a background on the aircraft? This was 2012, correct me if I'm wrong, and you had an aircraft that had, would it be fair to say it had a gremlin in it, or a glitch that?
Yeah, so 2012, 22nd of June 2012, my aircraft had some mechanical issues throughout our deployment then, but for, I think, anything were kind of reported with it was always kind of found ground test serviceable. On the day of the incident, what we had was something called an aft LCT, longitudinal cyclic trim. So there's 2 of them, one in the front rotor system, one in the aft rotor system, and they drive the rotors forward and aft depending on the airspeed and what you're to keep the aircraft as level and take the stress off the pylon. What happened with our aft longitudinal cyclic trim? So it basically sits in a box, and it's a jack screw that goes up and down. And ours had been serviced a few years ago before the incident, and it hadn't been properly re-greased. There was a lack of grease in the actual component. So effectively, what ended up happening for us is it started to slip, and for what initially we thought was kind of turbulent airflow, which seemed a bit strange because it was quite early in the morning and it was quite still. We were getting some feedback through the kind of controls. So myself and the flying pilot, who is an experienced maintenance test pilot, we kind of went down the rabbit hole. It must be an AFCS, automatic flight control system issue, and that's what. And the crew and I, the engineer on board as well, kind of all felt that that's what was going on.
And is this during an operational flight, or this was testing to try and find?
No, this was during an operational flight. So we'd been tasked with an American F model Chinook to do what's called a RIP, which is a relief in place of troops, American troops, on the edge of Helmand. We're going to drop a couple generators off first at a smaller forward operating base, and then take these guys to a larger one. On the way to the first one, we started to get some feedback on the approach in. We kind of had a bit of fault finding. We got on the ground of that operating base. I think we discussed shutting down, but that operating base had been recently mortared, and they really didn't want an aircraft sat there attracting more kind of enemy mortar fire.
So what was the feedback you were getting when you were flying?
Just a bit of vibration in the aircraft, which was unusual. And as I said, it felt a bit turbulent, like we were going through a bit of turbulence. So we, again, thinking it was a flight control issue, we spoke to the other aircraft, which was in charge of the formation for that flight, and said, look, we'll go to the next operating base. We'll drop these 30 American soldiers off, and then we'll transit back to Kandahar, and we were going to go AFCS off, and transit at above 1,500 feet out of small arms range for that trip back.
Yep.
On the way from the first operating base to the second one, we tried to do a bit more fault finding, trying to figure out which system it was. And then we started our approach in to the operating base, and that's pretty much when the component itself shattered or failed completely. So now
you were nearly back, yes?
We were nearly at the second operating base, yeah. Okay. So now as we're on our approach, the aft rotor system is now moving forward and aft of its own kind of accord. Then we kind of lost full control of the aircraft at about 70 feet, or 50 to 70 feet, is what the report says. But at that point in time, we'd gotten over the fob wall and into over the LZ as we kind of effectively free fell into the operating.
So that's what you mean by lose control. You free fell with
pretty much.
How many tons is the helicopter?
Well, we were probably operating at that point at around about 30 to 40, or probably closer to 40,000 pounds. So,
you drop 70 feet into the ground.
Yeah, so free fall drop 50 to 70 feet onto the ground.
And what's going through your mind when this is happening?
So once it went, the inside of the cockpit was like an earthquake. You couldn't read any of the dials. You couldn't see anything. The whole thing was starting to kind of shake itself apart. there was no point in me as the aircraft captain to take. I wasn't going to take the flight controls. My flying pilot was an experienced aviator as well, so it wasn't, and he wasn't really able to control much anyway, other than get us over the flattish area to pancake onto. And all I remember, once we kind of started that rapid descent down, was I grabbed the kind of over above the door area, cockpit door, and I just remember thinking, "Yeah, this is going to hurt." So, and then we hit hard onto the ground, and as we hit, the aircraft started to roll to the right, and I'm on the left hand side of the cockpit. As it started to roll, the forward main rotor blades started hitting the ground and disintegrating, and actually prevented us rolling all the way over onto our side. So that was a good thing. As we hit, the crashworthy fuel cells didn't really stay crashworthy. They kind of ripped open, and fuel started spilling out. The moment from thinking, "Yep, this is gonna hurt," to realizing, okay, we're actually upright. I remember, feeling the aircraft starting to tilt. I remember seeing the rotor blades hitting the ground, and then the kind of next thing in my head was seeing Mike, the flying pilot. He had his hands up trying to get the ECLs back, with the engine control levers back to the off position. You had to kind of squeeze them together. So I grabbed them and helped him shut the engines off. Got a quick radio call out, I think. And then I was waiting for Mike to open his door because he was on the lower side, but the airframe had twisted and he couldn't get his door off. So we punched my door off and we exited my side. And then a few minutes later, the right-hand gunner exited through the cockpit as well. So unfortunately, the side he was on, he had like some equipment and stuff hit him on the back. He watched the fuel cells kind of burst open in front of him. Saw the spray of gravel as the blades hit the ground, and he couldn't get out his side because the minigun was in the way. By the time he got kind of free of all the stuff on his back, he just came out through the cockpit. So we had.
Was anyone injured?
So the ramp, the AT crewman tech, had quite a bad laceration on his arm. No one at the time, physically injured. I think there was one of the passengers had a broken ankle, but that pretty much due to the fact we hit quite level and flat as we hit. So that was a saving grace. I think if we'd gone 30 seconds earlier or a minute earlier, we wouldn't have made it onto the fob or into the fob, and that would have been uneven ground. If it happened a couple minutes later, we would have unloaded our passengers and we would have been up at above 1,500 feet. And probably, from what I've read, what I've been told is that I think the incident's happened only a few times before. Once on I think it was a CH-46 over Canada, which broke up into 3 parts, and a British Chinook in the Falklands that they suspect is what happened, and they broke up as well in time.
So what do? You're out of the aircraft. You're safe. What happens now?
First thing is getting the crew, making sure everybody's out. Obviously there was a lot of jet fuel all over the ground, and a lot of debris from blades and whatnot. I remember thinking the first thing going through my head is I don't know what we did wrong. I don't know what we've done wrong. We've done something wrong. Screwed this up.
Yeah.
When the American Chinook told them, we've landed hard and the aircraft's broken down, like completely broken, ripped apart. Then because that operating base was quite a big one, they actually had a fire and an actual fire service there, so they brought that out, and we let them secure kind of the aircraft, as it were. Kind of made sure the flares were disarmed and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then we kind of made a few calls back to the headquarters. I think that was on a sat phone, so we couldn't actually talk about exactly what happened. And then we waited about an hour before some Black Hawks came with the maintenance personnel that were going to have a look at it, and they took us back to Kandahar, to the hospital there, to get checked over.
So each of the crew, you've obviously continued flying. Did it affect anyone enough that did anyone not continue flying again, or?
I'm pretty sure I know the other pilot, he didn't do very much more flying, and
yeah.
After that, the crewman, the left gunner, I believe, didn't do a great deal of flying before he was discharged from the army, and the same for the right gunner. And the AT, he did a bit more flying. He did quite a bit more flying, but then went up through the ranks and kind of left the flying role. So, interestingly enough, I was only thinking about this the other day. We've never actually had been brought together and been given an official debrief by the army or
really
anything. So we kind of pieced together. I got bits of reports, and others got I only one of the guys actually had the cockpit voice recorder, which I only just got last month, and got to hear the whole thing.
And what was that like, listening to?
Oh, that was pretty emotional. Yeah. First off, I'm glad we actually sounded really professional throughout the whole thing, which was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, the moment where it kind of goes, and then the audio gets cut off. That kind of brought shivers back to me.
How did you go long term with it? You, as I said, you obviously kept flying. Has it had any long term effects on you?
Yeah, I would say I find flying in turbulent weather stressful.
Okay.
That kind of same kind of movement is what led us to ending up, in that same. I do find that kind of stressful. On the whole, yeah, I think you'd have to ask my wife how I've dealt with it better than I have.
Yeah.
I would say, everybody deals with stuff differently. I think I've either managed to compartmentalize it, and it wasn't only really until maybe last year, the year before, where I was able to kind of really talk to one of my doctors, also as a counselor, and really kind of open up a bit more about the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely times when I think about it. Times where I go, oh, I wish things had maybe turned out different or better or worse, depending on the mood. Yeah, so you do kind of think about it. You've written off a multi-million-dollar, strategic asset, and and then knowing that it didn't really matter what we did, it was going to happen anyway. And that kind of, there was no, was there any lining up of the holes in the cheese or anything like that? It was just literally one of those things that it went, and there was nothing anybody could ever have done about it.
So, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Have you had it? Do you think you've had it? Was it just, if you do, was it just that incident, or is it a accumulation of incidents?
Look, I think there's I'm not a big fan of calling it PTSD anymore. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know what to call it, but for me, definitely accumulation. We on Aircoys, we went to the tsunami relief in Indonesia. We saw quite a lot of stuff there. The thing about Afghanistan is, and from it becomes a simple life over there. You fly, you plan, you eat, you train, you sleep. You don't pay bills. You don't worry about the day-to-day living. You don't worry about money. You don't worry about anything except doing your job. And you work in a close-knit group of people. And probably for me, coming back to society is still hard. You still find that hard. Like, I don't particularly come back and go, this is all worth fighting for.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not sure. I wouldn't call it PTSD, but an accumulation of a career plus some significant incidents. Probably, I would say, skews your mental health. And that operating in those environments, like I said, completely separate from normal civilization. It kind of skews you the way you either mentally think about things or mentally take care of yourself or don't take care of yourself. And you could call it PTSD, I don't know, but it's not. I think there's definitely PTSD, and then there's accumulated events that over time affect you. Yeah.
Does it make? Do you find it? Has it been at times mundane to come back to civilian life after such a different life in the military?
I guess I was lucky because I went from military to EMS, so that definitely helped. That that mundaneness, the unpredictability of what we do, certainly was a familiar kind of facet. I think, like I said, I never really talked too much about it to family or friends or anything like that. I'm a bit more open about it now, and I think I think right. Mundane of just sitting at home sometimes, going, "What am I going to do? Like, why is my life not exciting?" That was a hard transition. And luckily, with some amazing patience from my wife and family and friends, kind of got steered back onto a good course, and now just readjusting that mental capacity of what's now important to me, and relearning that what is important to me. My house, my garden, my dog, all that kind of stuff becomes more important now.
Do you ever have difficulty in your current role in regards to the illness or how sick the patients are that you now transport?
No, I think that's one bad side effect, is that on the whole, I don't have as much empathy for the people we're going to as certainly some of the paramedics I work with who have amazing empathy.
Yeah.
Like their empathy, the empathy the paramedics give is crazy sometimes. And
So
as I said one the other day, it's both your biggest strength and your biggest weakness, because you can't let that go. There are definitely jobs which do resonate with me, but on the whole, I seem to be able to maintain quite a good detachment from it.
So what's next for Alex Tooms?
Well, I'd like to. Well, I'm trying to move away from the operational side of helicopters into the uncrewed air systems with Babcock, who we fly for. I think that'd be quite an exciting journey to go down. But certainly, over the next few years, probably step away from the operational flying side of things.
Yeah. Hey, Alex, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for your story, and thanks for your service to our country, and that was certainly an extraordinary story, a frightening one, but thank you for everything that you've done for Australia and for peace efforts, but also thank you for what you do for Air Ambulance Victoria as well. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks, Ross. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.